So I discovered a secret, a drawing secret to trick people into thinking that you are an art god. Forget about drawing pretty girls and handsome boys. If you want people to take you seriously, you have to know this secret. Draw water. Okay, not that type of water. Water on the face. And so today we are going to draw teardrops on the face. But first we need to find a reference photo. And of course, there's no better place to look than the haven of reference itself, Pinterest. We simply just have to look and find the right one. Now, this is what I'm talking about. The shine in the eyes is so bright, the teardrop is very distinct. This is the one to go with. But wait, this is the same eye from Chris Samba. This is also the same eye from this YouTuber, Emi Kalia. This is also the same one. This one also. Oh, hell now. We are definitely not drawing this one again. We have to find something unique. Something no one else has tried. Something that will... Ooh, nice. 2 teardrops with this one, in fact. Nice looking iris. We can work with this. Of course, we are going to remove the color because we don't do color here. And so, we lay out our pencil, get our paper ready, and now, let's start this drawing. So now that we've gotten the outline of the eye out of the way, it's now time for us to start the shading. Before we shade though, you want to make sure that you mark out the highlights, like you see me doing here with this sort of rectangle shape. I shade the pupil of the eye with my 2B pencil. If you look at the reference photo, this part is pitch black, and we will eventually shade this area to be pitch black. But for now, it's best to, warm up our hands and start with light layers. I also shade the rest of the iris. I blend and then I do the same with my 4B pencil. But now I do something I always do with my eye drawing. I divide the eye into different quadrants, so to speak, like spokes in a bicycle. And the reason I do this is because these lines will form the foundation for the details of the eyes. Because while these details have varying sizes and shapes, they all still follow a particular pattern, the pattern of the bicycle spoke. So now it's time to get into the big boy stuff. Charcoal pencil. A charcoal pencil is such an enjoyable medium to work with. Like now, if I wanted to stick with graphite pencils, this dark pupil would not have gotten this dark and it would have produced an ungodly amount of shine. But then be careful when you use charcoal, especially with the finer details. I try to make sure that my pencil is sharp so it can produce the intricate details of the iris. Also, make sure that with all your blending and dusting, the highlights doesn't get stained. Oh yes, I forgot to tell you, this is also another secret to hyperrealism that no one will tell you. If you want something to shine, just make it very white and surround it with dark shadows. Like the highlights of the eyes, you can see how it pops out because of the shadows around it. But that is enough of shading the iris. Let's now move on to the skin so that we can get started with the sweet teardrops. And now for the bottom of the eyes. You can see I have already drawn the 2 outlines that I have for the teardrops there. But while I am shading this area with the base shading of my 2B pencil, I am also trying to avoid shading inside the teardrops themselves. Of course, it is inevitable that some shading will eventually enter into these outlines, but I am trying not to intentionally shade them because we are going to apply a different shading technique for the teardrops. You notice that I am not really explaining in full detail how I am shading the skin along the iris, and this is because the main focus of this video are the teardrops, and we are going to get to that in a second. But if you want to watch the full tutorial, not sped up but the real-time version with voiceover narration, check out my Patreon. If you sign up for the Eager Learner tier for $6, you get access to this tutorial as well as the other tutorials that I have created. Check it out at patreon.com/JasonLegendaryArt. It will be the first link in the description. But now we face the teardrops. Now, what makes teardrops, or in the full sense, water drops themselves, realistic? When you observe a normal hard object, if the light is coming from the right part of the object will be bright, while the opposite part where light is not touching will be dark. But for water drops, it is the complete opposite. You see, when the light hits water drop from the right, that right part, rather than being bright, will be dark, while the opposite part, the part where light isn't really touching, will be bright. It's really funny but very true. But then on the dark part, you can now find a sharp highlight. So let's now apply all these lessons to our drawing. The light is coming from the top, but it is the bottom that is bright. And now we now see a little highlight on the top. So we replicate that. I'm using my 2B pencil to start, and I am shading in circular motion so that the shading is very soft. I try to leave the bottom to be bright, and I also try not to forget the shadows that are under the teardrop, because the teardrop is also casting a little bit of shadow onto the face, so we have to also draw that shadow. I blend, and then I layer also with my charcoal powder and makeup brush. I'm basically doing all the observation that we mentioned before. I make the top to be dark while the bottom remains bright. While you shade with charcoal powder, by all means make sure that you start very light. You can now darken as you go. Making it dark once will just make the drawing seriously messy. To make the teardrops pop out more, I'm going to use my kneaded eraser to make the highlights at the bottom of the teardrops to be brighter. We now move to the second teardrops, and this second teardrops is even looking more interesting. And just like the first teardrop, with this teardrop also, the top is dark and the bottom is bright. But there is one very obvious difference. The sharp highlights on the dark parts is very visible, and so it is vital that we add these highlights, or this will make or break the teardrops. And let me just say that there is no better tool to make these sharp highlights than the Tombow Mono Zero eraser. I recently just got this eraser, and oh boy am I enjoying it. I'm going to use it now to carve out the white details of the highlights. Don't imagine these highlights. All you just have to do is to copy exactly every stroke, every dot you find in the reference photo. And it's just very funny how this one act of adding the highlights elevates the realism of this drawing. It makes it seem like actual liquid. But now, this doesn't mean that you should go around spraying every teardrop you draw with sharp highlights like this one. If the reference photo does not call for sharp highlights, don't draw sharp highlights. Like you see, I did not add sharp highlights to the first teardrop because it was not in the reference photo. So we've gone ahead to add the eyelashes. And so all that is left for this piece is to darken the places that need more shadow, add the highlights to the tear ducts, refine the details, and now it's time for the moment you've all been waiting for, the reveal. In the right place with you.